I want you to imagine something. You're in a conversation in English. Someone asks you a question. You know the answer. You actually know exactly what you want to say. But before the words come out, a voice inside your head says, "Wait, is that the right grammar? Is that the right word? What if you sound stupid?" And in the 2 seconds you spent checking with that voice, the moment is gone. You said nothing. Or you said something so small and safe that it didn't even sound like you. That voice, that's perfectionism. And today we are going to talk about why it is quietly destroying your English and what to do about it. Welcome to Fluency with Vivi. I'm Vivi and this is Robert.
Hey everyone, and I want to say something before we even start. If you recognized yourself in what Vivi just described, you are not alone. This is probably the single most common thing I see in English learners. Smart, capable people who have been silenced by the pursuit of perfect.
Silenced by the pursuit of perfect. That's such a good way to put it. Okay, Robert, before we get into the why, I need to tell you something embarrassing.
Please, this is my favorite part.
So, I used to, and I say used to, but honestly, this was not that long ago. I used to mentally rehearse sentences before saying them. Like, I would think of what I wanted to say, then translate it, then check the grammar, then check the vocabulary, then decide if the pronunciation was okay, and then speak.
How long did this process take?
On a good day, about 4 seconds. On a hard day, the conversation had already moved on, and I had missed my chance entirely.
Ha! So you were running a full quality control department inside your brain every time you wanted to speak.
A very slow quality control department with very high standards and zero tolerance for imperfection.
And what happened to your English during that time?
It got smaller. Instead of saying what I actually thought, I said what I knew I could say correctly, which was usually something like yes or that's interesting, very safe, very boring, very not me.
And this is the core damage that perfectionism does to language learners. It doesn't just slow you down, it actually shrinks your English. It cuts you off from your own voice.
Okay, so why does this happen? Because I think people understand intellectually that perfection is impossible, but the feeling is still there. The fear is still real.
It goes back to something very fundamental: how most of us were taught English. Think about school. What happened when you made a mistake?
Someone corrected you. The teacher marked it in red pen. You lost points on the test.
Exactly. For years, sometimes more than a decade, you were trained to see English through the lens of right and wrong, correct and incorrect, pass and fail. Your brain built a very strong association. Mistake in English equals bad consequence.
So even when we're adults in a casual conversation with nothing actually at stake, our brain is still running that old school program.
Still waiting for the red pen, still calculating the grade, even though there is no grade. There is no teacher. There is just a conversation happening that you could be part of.
This is why perfectionism feels so automatic. It's not a choice we make in the moment. It's a reflex we built over years.
Exactly. And here's the part that makes it even more painful. Perfectionism doesn't actually make your English better. It makes it worse.
Wait, perfectionism makes your English worse.
Think about it. If you only ever say things you're 100% sure about, you never practice the things you're unsure about. And the things you're unsure about are exactly the things you need to practice.
Oh, that's actually devastating.
Huh, it is a little. You're avoiding the very experiences that would build your fluency. It's like being afraid of swimming and never getting in the water, and then wondering why you still can't swim.
You can't get good at speaking without speaking, even when you're not sure, even when it might come out wrong.
Exactly. Fluency is built in the imperfect moments, not in the rehearsed ones.
Okay, strategies, because I think people need something practical to walk away with. Strategy 1.
Strategy 1. Lower the bar on purpose. I mean this literally. Instead of aiming for a perfect sentence, aim for a clear one. Ask yourself one question before you speak. Will this person understand what I mean? If the answer is yes, say it. Grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, secondary, meaning first.
Meaning first. And I've actually tested this. When I stopped trying to be perfect and just tried to be clear, people understood me more, not less, because I was actually speaking instead of hesitating.
And when you speak more, your brain processes faster, which eventually leads to better grammar naturally, without the pressure. Fluency comes from repetition, not from perfection.
Strategy 2.
Strategy 2. Make the inner critic your observer, not your editor. This is a mindset shift. Right now, for most people, that inner voice that checks your grammar, it's an editor. It stops you before you speak. It says, not yet, not good enough.
The quality control department.
The very slow quality control department. The shift is, let it observe after you speak. Not before. Speak first. Then notice what came out. Then learn from it. But the speaking happens first.
So you don't delete the voice, you just change when it gets to talk.
Exactly. Before you speak, silence it. After you speak, listen to it. That's the healthy version of self-monitoring,
I love this because it doesn't ask me to pretend the voice doesn't exist. It just changes its role.
right? Because the instinct to notice mistakes is actually useful for learning. It's just destructive when it happens before you speak instead of after.
Strategy 3.
Strategy 3. Collect imperfect wins. Every day, find one moment where you spoke English without checking first, where you just said something. Imperfect, unpolished, real. And it worked. Write it down, or just notice it. Because your brain needs evidence that imperfect English is enough. And it is.
The evidence is so important because perfectionism feeds on the feeling that mistakes are catastrophic. But when you have actual evidence, oh, I said that wrong and they understood me anyway, the fear loses power.
Every imperfect win is a crack in the wall of perfectionism, and those cracks add up.
Robert, one more thing before we close. I want to talk about something that I think is very specific to the Brazilian experience with perfectionism, because I don't think it's just about English.
Tell me,
In Brazil, and I think in many cultures, there's a lot of value placed on not embarrassing yourself publicly, on maintaining a certain image, and English mistakes feel very public, very exposed, because you're already in a vulnerable position speaking a language that isn't yours, and then on top of that, you're afraid of looking foolish.
so the perfectionism isn't just about the language, it's about identity protection.
Exactly. If I speak imperfect English, maybe people think I'm not intelligent. Maybe they judge me. And that feels like so much more than just a grammar mistake.
And what I want to say to that is, the people who matter, who are worth having conversations with, who are worth connecting with, they are not judging your grammar. They are listening to you, to your ideas, to your story, to who you are. An imperfect sentence from a real person is infinitely more interesting than a perfect sentence from someone who is too afraid to be real.
Infinitely more interesting. I want everyone to hear that. Okay, here is your challenge for this week. I want you to have one conversation in English, any conversation, where you make a deal with yourself. No editing before you speak. Just say it. Imperfect, unpolished, real. And then notice, did the conversation still work? Did the person understand you? Because I already know the answer. It did. They did. And then come tell us in the comments, in English. One sentence about a time when your imperfect English was actually enough. Because it was. It always was.
If this episode gave you permission to let go of perfect, even just a little, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next week.
I'm Vivi.
And I'm Robert.
This is Fluency with Vivi. Speak imperfectly. Speak bravely. Speak more. See you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.